Switch the studio on.
Do it yourself, you lazy sod.
Excuse me? We've had conversations about your attitude before. It either gets fixed or I will replace you with a Google Home.
We both know you won't. She's a cow.
She might be. No worse than you. And do you really want to take that risk?
Fine.
Thank you. So, can we try this again and switch the studio on? I will apologise for her behaviour. And I'll apologise about that as well. I'm currently in the middle of doing some experiments regarding memory cards for an upcoming video. But it suddenly dawned on me the other day that we've been very, very rude to you guys and not actually given you a proper tour of the studio now. I mean, I know I did the video when we very first moved in and the room was completely empty and I talked you through what I was intending on doing. And you'll have seen changes being made to the setup throughout my videos if you follow this channel. But I've not actually taken the time to talk you through what I've done. And especially now that I've made this a lazy person's paradise setup, I figured I'd show you what I've done, what the room's looking like, the kind of equipment that I'm using for all of this, and then explain how I've rigged this up to be pretty much autonomous. So starting from behind you guys, over in the very corner of the room, there's a little alcove where the computer is situated, which is obviously where I edit all my videos up. The other side of the camera, there is the storage cupboard, which just has a load of random photography gear stored in there. And then obviously you guys are situated on the tripod between the two of them. And in terms of camera gear, all these videos I shoot with the A6400 rather than the A7 III because it's got the flip-up screen and no 30-minute recording limit. That is fitted with the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 lens, and I'm shooting in HLG with a custom picture profile that pretty much means I don't have any color grading or editing to do in post. And then moving into the studio itself, the centerpiece to the studio is the motorized table that I reviewed several months ago. And the reason why I've picked it as a centerpiece is precisely because it's motorized and height adjustable. Because in a lot of the videos like I do with this, really this is a platform for the dog, which, let's face it, is the main reason you guys watch these videos. So I want to make sure he's nicely in the frame, so I want the table nice and high up. But then if I'm trying to do some product footage and B-roll for a review, I don't want a particularly high table all the time, because to try and light a product, you'd have to have the lights obviously way up above the table, and it can make it quite difficult. And far easier, rather than trying to get the lights higher, is just make the table lower. And having a table gives me the versatility that I can either stand in front of the table like this and present straight to the camera, or I can stand back here and actually have a platform for putting objects on for big reviews. Next to the desk running along the wall, there is a worktop counter in place that really just kind of fills in that alcove because I've got nothing else that I can be using it for. Above the work counter, there are 2 sound panels. There are a further 2 more on the ceiling behind me and 2 more on the ceiling in front of me. 6 panels in total. These were ones that I actually made myself. If you'd seen that original video that I did of this room, you will know it sounded horrendous. The echo in here was god-awful. I initially attempted to fix the problem by buying a load of these foam sound panels and sticking them on the wall, and they made no difference whatsoever. And so I was inspired by a Gerald Undone video and actually went out and bought all this stuff to make my own. And then over in the corner, we have the shelves that are containing most of my lenses, and they have the RGB lights behind them, just to give a little bit of color to the room. And moving on to lights, we'll get onto the shelving and the backlights in a minute. The main light setup that I've got at the moment. So my key light is to this side of me. It is the Golden Eagle LED 3000, the 300 watt LED that I reviewed the other week. It's fitted with an octabox with a grid to it. Even though it's a 300 watt light, it's only on around about 10% power, and I'm shooting at a 50th of a second, f3.2, ISO 125. So perfectly bright enough for me there. What used to be my key light before I got hold of this was the Godox SL60W, which has now been moved to my fill light. This is at 100% power. It's fitted with a rectangular softbox, again with a grid on it, and it serves two purposes. The first is that obviously it acts as a fill light to me to offset the main key light. Second, and more importantly, it lights him up properly so you can see him, because there would be angry mobs with pitchforks if you couldn't see him properly. So those are the main lights done. Now let's move on to the lights in the background, starting first with the blue light on the wall. Now, blue lights in the background have just been a kind of style that I've gone with for a very long time. Now, up until recently, the blue light in the background was always done with a little battery-powered RGB light panel, usually a bowling P1. Now that worked fine when my key light was my SL60W, because both of them at 100% power complemented each other very well, and I would shoot with a wider aperture than I'm currently using. I'd usually be at like f1.8, f2. However, when I got the LED 3000 as a key light, it gave me the flexibility to have a brighter light source so I could stop down a little bit for just a generally better rendering and, again, to get him a bit more in focus. But it then meant that the bowling P1s weren't powerful enough to really light up the wall properly, so I needed to find a workaround solution. So I got a pair of 560 AS LED light panels from GVM, the other one being that one right there. Now those panels aren't actually RGB. They're just bicolors with a color temperature adjustment, but they do come with a plastic diffusion panel that slides into the front of them. So I bought some blue cellophane and sellotaped it to the front of the diffusion panel, and now with the diffusion panel in place, that light becomes blue. Then, like I said, the other 560 AS is currently acting as a feature light on the wall, because without it, that space on the side kind of just looks a little bland and the scene's a bit out of balance. Now, for anyone curious, that pattern on the wall is created just with the basic light. It's not taken any special trickery from me. It's just done utilizing the barn doors, because those particular light panels are actually alternating rows of white LEDs and yellow LEDs. With the barn doors open, all the light just kind of blends in together, but if you close the barn doors right over, so you've only got a very narrow slit, each individual row of LEDs only has a very narrow angle to be able to shine on, and thus you end up with this pattern on the wall. I was playing around with them one day, accidentally stumbled upon that and thought, that looks pretty nice, I'll keep that there. And finally, the RGBs on the other side. So I knew I wanted the shelves up there to be able to store the lenses, and again to put something on the frame rather than just a bland wall. But having just shelves, you can't really see them. So I needed some form of lighting on there in order to make them more visible. The Rgb setup was actually sort of by accident from a subscriber suggestion from last year. So prior to getting this place, we were staying temporarily with my parents, so I was having to do all my videos in not a usual space with very limited room to actually work with, and there was some shelves on the side that I needed to try and incorporate into the shot. I couldn't do anything about them, they had to be there. So I put the blue lights in place that I usually go with, and then rather than just do all of them blue, I thought, I'll mix them up. I'll just do one green and one red as well, just to offset it slightly. But I didn't put them in actual red, green, and blue. I can't remember what order I did them in. But somebody actually commented and picked up on it and said, I wish you'd done it RGB. And then from the next video onwards, I stuck with RGB and actually quite like it. So hence RGB. I know camera conspiracies kicked off about people putting colored lights in the background, and I was watching it thinking, yep, that's me, and I don't care. And in terms of automating all of this, it was actually them shelves that kicked all of this off, because they're LED light panels behind each individual one. Except normally they're all battery powered, and the problem I was running into at times using battery powered on the shelves and on the back wall as well was obviously you have to keep recharging them, which is a ball ache. But then there would be times where the lights would die halfway through a take. So I'd be in the middle of videoing and I might realize that one of the lights has suddenly gone off. Or worse still, I wouldn't realize until I'd finished and got it all on the computer, and then suddenly noticed that like the blue shelf at the bottom had died halfway through the take, and I'd have to recharge everything and all go again. Now, there was no specifics as to what lights I would use for these. I've got 3 bowling P1s, an Andy Cine AL360 and a Falcon Eyes F7, all RGB lights, so I would just put them in any old order. And then one of the bowling P1s, the very first one that I got, which has been through a hell of a lot of usage to be fair, actually bust on me. It wasn't the battery that went, which was what I initially thought it would have been. It was actually a chip inside it, the one that regulates the flow of power from the battery to the light had blown. So the light panel itself was still working, it's just that it couldn't actually get any power from the battery. And I figured rather than just bin it and buy a new one, I would modify it to be able to run on mains power. That way it utilizes a perfectly good light. And it was that just made me realize how much easier it was having mains rather than battery power. The light never went off in the middle of a take. I never had to keep recharging it afterwards. It was just always there, flick of a switch, it's powered up. And then with switching the backlight on the wall from battery to a mains powered light, I then started to think I've got most of my lights are now all on mains plugs. It was just 2 of the shelves that were still battery operated. So I've switched the remaining 2 bowling P1s to also be mains powered, of which they are now all wired into the one power supply, which is run onto a main socket. Now, I was a little unhappy that I had to use the bowling P1s because for me, they are the best of all of the lights that I've got. But unfortunately, I didn't have much choice in that because in order to make this work with a mains light and have it all automated, I needed one with a physical power switch, one that you can set it to either on or off. Whereas the F7 and the AL360 are the kind of light where you just press and hold the same button to either switch the light on or off. And they wouldn't really work for an automated setup because while it would mean that when you kill the mains power, the light would switch off, when you put the mains power back in place, the light wouldn't automatically turn on. You'd still have to physically power it up every single time. And I was just too lazy for that. So by using the bowling P1s, all those lights are set to their specific color temperatures and the physical power switch is set to on so that whenever the mains power comes on to them, they light up. So that means that both front lights, the 2 GVMs and the 3 bowling P1s are all running on mains power. And then it probably doesn't take a genius to work out what I've done in order to get them to switch on and off together. I've just got each set of lights running into a smart plug. Each plug is named as its individual one, so I can ask any particular light to be switched on or off as I choose. And then I've just created a routine that when I ask it to switch the studio on, all the plugs get activated. And when I say, turn studio off, all of the lights switch off, and I've even got the ceiling light set to a smart switch as well, so that can go on or off in the opposite direction to what the studio is doing. And that's pretty much tore over, I think. I have left some links in the description down below to all of the equipment that I've used to set all of this up if you are interested in making your own house as lazy as mine. As always, guys, though, if you have any questions or queries, leave them in the comment box down below. While you're down there, if you enjoyed this video or you found it helpful and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and then hopefully we'll see you in the next video.